Ooh, damn, we're getting some nice lighting there. If only I could see the sunset from here. All right, guys, today we're going to do a reading from How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes, Mastermind by Maria Konnikova. My apologies to the author if I butchered your name. So we're going to start in chapter 1, and I'm going to read the first little kind of blurb. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Chapter 1, The Scientific Method of the Mind. Something sinister was happening to the farm animals of Great Riley. Hoo boy. Sheep, cows, horses, one by one they were falling dead in the middle of the night. The cause of death? A long, shallow cut to the stomach that caused a slow and painful bleeding. Farmers were outraged. The community shocked. Who would want to cause such pain to defenseless creatures? The police thought they had their answer. George Idagi, the half-Indian son of the local vicar. In 1903, 27-year-old Idagi was sentenced to 7 years of hard labor for one of the 16 mutilations, that of a pony whose body had been found in a pit near the vicar's residence. Little did it matter that the vicar swore his son was asleep at the time of the crime, or that the killings continued after George's imprisonment, or indeed that the evidence was largely based on anonymous letters that George was said to have written, in which he implicated himself as the killer. The police, led by Staffordshire Chief Constable Captain George Anson, were certain they had their man. 3 years later, Adagi was released. 2 petitions protesting his innocence, one signed by 10,000 people, the other from a group of 300 lawyers, had been sent to the Home Office, citing a lack of evidence in the case. And yet, the story was far from over. Adagi may have been free in prison, but in name he was still guilty. Prior to his arrest, he had been a solicitor. Now he could not be remitted to his practice. In 1906, George Adagi caught a lucky break. Arthur Conan Doyle, the famed creator of Sherlock Holmes, had become interested in the case. That winter, Conan Doyle agreed to meet Adagi at the Grand Hotel in Charing Cross. And there, across the lobby, any lingering doubts Sir Arthur may have had about the young man's innocence were dispelled. As he later wrote, he had come to my hotel appointment, but I had been delayed, and he was passing the time by reading the paper. I recognized my man by his dark face, so I stood and observed him. He held the paper close to his eyes and rather sideways, proving not only a high degree of myopia, but marked astigmatism. The idea of such a man scouring fields at night and assaulting cattle while avoiding the watching police was ludicrous. There, in a single physical defect, lay the moral certainty of his innocence. But though Conan Doyle himself was convinced, he knew it would take more to capture the attention of the Home Office. And so he traveled to the Great Riley to gather evidence in the case. He interviewed locals. He investigated the scenes of the crimes, the evidence, the circumstances. He met with the increasingly hostile Captain Anson. He visited George's old school. He reviewed old records of anonymous letters and pranks against the family. He traced the handwriting expert who had proclaimed that Adagi's hand matched that of the anonymous missives. And then he put his findings together for the Home Office. The bloody razors? Nothing but old rust. and in any case, incapable of making the type of wounds that had been suffered by the animals. The dirt on Eldaji's clothes, not the same dirt in the field where the pony was discovered. The handwriting expert, he had previously made mistaken identifications which had led to false convictions. And of course, there was the question of the eyesight. Could someone with such astigmatism and severe myopia really navigate nocturnal fields in order to maim animals? In the spring of 1907, Eldaji was finally cleared of the charge of animal slaughter. It was less than the complete victory for which Conan Doyle had hoped. George was not entitled to any compensation for his arrest and jail time, but it was something. Eldaji was readmitted to his legal practice. The Committee of Inquiry found, as summarized by Conan Doyle, the police commenced and carried out their investigations not for the purpose of finding out who was the guilty party, but for the purpose of finding evidence against Eldaji, who they already who they were already sure was the guilty man. And in August of that year, England saw the creation of its first Court of Appeals to deal with future miscarriages of justice in a more systematic fashion. The Eldaji case was widely considered one of the main impetuses behind its creation. Conan Doyle's friends were impressed. None, however, hit the nail on the head quite as much as the novelist George Meredith. I shall not mention the name which must not which must have become wearisome to your ears, Meredith told Conan Doyle. But the creator of the marvelous amateur detective has shown what he can do in the life of breath. Sherlock Holmes might have been fiction, but his rigorous approach to the thought was real indeed. If properly aligned, his methods could leap off the page and result in a tangible, positive changes, and they could, too, go far and beyond the world of crime. Say the name Sherlock Holmes, and doubtless any number of images will come to mind. The pipe, the deerstalker, the cloak, the violin, the hawk-like profile. Perhaps William Gillette or Basil Rathbone or Jeremy Brett or any number of the luminaries who have over the years taken up Holmes' mantle, including the current portrayals by Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr. Whatever pictures in your mind bring up, I would venture to guess that the word psychologist isn't one of them, and yet perhaps it's time that it was. Holmes was a detective second to none, it's true, but his insights into the human mind rival the greatest feats of criminal justice. What Sherlock Holmes offers isn't just a way of solving crime, it is an entire way of thinking, a mindset that can be applied to countless enterprises far removed from the foggy streets of London underworld. It is an approach born out of the scientific method that transcends science and even crime. Both can serve as a model for thinking, a way of being even, just as powerful in our time as it was Conan Doyle's. And that, I would argue, is the secret to Holmes' enduring, overwhelming, and ubiquitous appeal. When Conan Doyle created Sherlock Holmes, he didn't think much of its hero. It's doubtful that he set out intentionally to create a model for thought, for decision making, and for how to structure, lay out, and solve problems in our minds. And yet sorry, and yet that is precisely what he did. He created, in effect, the perfect spokesperson for the revolution in science and thought that had been unfolding in the preceding decades and would continue into the dawn of the new century. In 1887, Holmes became a new kind of detective, an unprecedented thinker who deployed his mind in unprecedented ways. Today, Holmes serves as an ideal model for how we can think better than we do in a matter of course. As a matter of course. In many ways, Sherlock Holmes was a visionary. His explanations, his methodology, his entire approach to thought presaged developments in psychology and neuroscience that occurred over 100 years after his birth and over 80 years after his creator's death. But somehow, too, his way of thought seems almost inevitable, a clear product of its time and place in history. If the scientific method was coming into its prime, all in manner of thinkings and doings, from evolution to radiography, general relativity to the discovery of germs and anesthesia, behaviorism to psychoanalysis, then why ever not in the principles of thought itself? In Arthur Conan Doyle's own estimation, Sherlock Holmes was meant from the outset to be an embodiment of the scientific, an ideal that we could aspire to, if never emulate altogether. After all, what are ideals for if not to be just a little bit out of reach? Holmes's very name speaks at once of an intent beyond a simple detective of the old-fashioned sort. It is very likely that Conan Doyle chose it as a deliberate tribute to one of his childhood idols, the philosopher Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, Sir Senior, a figure known for his writing as his contributions to medical practice. The detective's character, in turn, was modeled after another mentor, Dr. Joseph Bell, a surgeon known for his powers of close observation. It was said that Dr. Bell could tell from a single glance that a patient was recently discharged non-commissioned officer in a Highland regiment who had just returned from his service in Barbados and had tested routinely his students' own power of perception with methods that included self-experimentation with various noxious substances. To students of Holmes, that may all sound rather familiar. As Conan Doyle wrote to Bell, round the center of deduction and inference and observation which I have heard you inculcate. Okay. I have tried to build up a man who has pushed the thing as far as it would go, further occasionally. It is here, in observation and inference and deduction, that we come to the heart of what is exactly that makes Holmes who he is, distinct from every other detective who appeared before, or indeed after. The detective who elevated the art of detection to a precise science. We first learn that the quintessential Sherlock Holmes approach in A Study in Scarlet, the detective's first appearance in the public eye. To Holmes, we soon discover each case is not just a case as would appear to the officials of Scotland Yard, a crime, some facts, some persons of interest, all coming together to bring a criminal to justice, but as something more and less. More in that it takes on a larger, more general significance as an object of broad speculation and inquiry, a scientific conundrum, if you will. It has contours that inevitably were seen before in earlier problems and will certainly repeat again. Broader principles that can apply to other moments that may not even seem at first glance related. Less in that it is stripped of any accompanying emotion and conjecture, all elements that were deemed extraneous to clarity of thought and made as objective and non-scientific reality could ever be. The result? The crime as an object of strict scientific inquiry to be approached by the principles of the scientific method, its servant, the human mind. And I think we're going to stop it right there. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.